We talk a lot. We talk a lot. There is a proverb in Uganda that says, if you make an agreement with a lion to become vegetarian, be rest assured you are the first vegetable the lion will eat.
I'm a king.
The African state, that entity, has failed to protect, to secure, except sometimes the state is very efficient in repressing expressions of poverty or very efficient in protecting a few elites, especially foreign elites. The state never fails to protect multinational companies each time any of their properties or interests are at stake. But the state sometimes grows amnesia when there is a threat to poor people or the poorest of the people. Which means, colleagues, if we're thinking about insecurity, ultimately, there is now a marketplace for and of the means of violence. And the merchants in that marketplace are drawn from various levels of society, including the global. For example, in some of the countries that are listening to me now, there are now local militias or defense units. Sometimes we call them some other names. We have gangs that control the extraction of gold, gangs that control the extraction of minerals, gangs that control narcotics, gangs included in the trade and trafficking of women and girls. My brother, Minister Diop, has referred you to the context of Mali, of the Sahel, and it is the context we're seeing in other parts of the continent, including parts of the Great Lakes and parts of the Horn, where private military companies from America, from France, from wherever, and external special forces are present, constantly assuring us that we are insecure and that they have brought security, but constantly unable to deal with the so-called minor problem of our insecurity. Even in this period of uncertainty on whether a foreign army's presence and special forces and private military companies was assuring any form of security, the one thing that remained secure was the gold moving out of our countries unprocessed, was the ore, the critical minerals, were things that were being taken. Esteemed members of the security forces and diplomats, stop sleepwalking. I call it a Premier League of pettiness, Minister. You know, they tell you the reason why these people are fighting is because of tribalism, Islam, Christianity, pastoralism, and etc. I say, And they just started fighting some more the minute you discovered gold, the minute you discovered chrome, the minute you discovered cobalt. Somehow, tribalism amongst illiterate and semi-literate people in my country has ratcheted up. Hey, my people, book illiterate, chrome literate. This coincidence does not work well. We cannot subcontract or sublet our security to someone else, especially someone else who has an interest in ensuring they are able to get our minerals and our underground water at a price that's affordable or at no price or in exchange for guns and offering security. When my parents were fighting for the liberation of my country, they were called terrorists. And I'm always mindful when it comes to this naming and labeling that we don't end up in an overly simplistic concept of everything being terrorism. The greatest terror caused in our country is often by elites in the bureaucracy in government who get into cahoots with foreign interests and are willing to sell their children, great-grandchildren, and grandmothers in exchange for expensive cars, for investments overseas, for little shiny trinkets, never factories that produce, never productive economy sectors, but trinkets that distinguish them as natives who did not transcend into understanding economy. I wish to call this what it is. It's not just greed. It's a splendid display of foolishness. You know, very few African countries have satellites. When there was a desire to actually ensure that you have your own satellites to help you with all sorts of data of intelligence and also gathering, it was torpedoed by some of our own people who said it's too expensive. And yet for us to understand what's happening in our geospatial space, even underground, to know how many or how much minerals we have, we now have to go to those that have the technology. So clearly, how do you do liberation when you depend on funding to do it, you depend on external data to do it, you depend on external expertise to do it, you depend on external technology to do it. I am not saying you should never use external resources and technology. It has now been discovered that the African gene or the black gene possesses a lot of solutions to both current and future global health challenges. So there is a contest over our genes. And we are sitting here, when we ask us where do we invest, we want to build a new parliament building with more seats. We want, come on, people. We can blame colonialism for many things, but I think we need to inspect our own heads. We have high unemployment rates, low productivity rates, we export unbeneficiated goods, we now have accentuated challenges related to poverty and inequality that are dramatized by others who want to exploit us some more. And we, faced with this moment, critical moment of leadership, are asked to decide what is important, and what is important is better cars, better buildings. Colonialism left us with weak institutions, with poor infrastructure, fragmented and divided society, and ideologies of divisionism. Colonialism called it divide and conquer. But in the immediate post-independence, it's divide, loot, divide, decimate, divide, extract, divide, and aid. You create a cyclical dependency, intellectual dependency, economic dependency, political dependency, security dependency. So that when you want to do your own security, you have to go external. When you want to do your own economy, you have to go external. When you want to do your own science, you have to go external. When you want to produce data, you have to go external. I am a very proud African, as you know. I have spent the last 30 years preaching pan-Africanism. What is pan-Africanism without capacity to produce own liberation? What is pan-Africanism without the capacity to think for yourself, to project the future through science, and etc.? Let's not conflate electoralism with democracy. Let's not conflate Western liberal democracy with democracy. The apartheid state in South Africa held free, fair, and regular elections where black people were not really included. This is how black people were included. They were asked amongst themselves in a black voters' roll to hold their own elections. So technically speaking, if you just are ticking boxes of liberal democracy, apartheid, that evil system, racist system, was a democratic system. In Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, where I belong or I was born, the Rhodesian government had an A voters roll, B voters roll, multi-parties. White parties contested for power. You will have people go to the extreme and say democracy doesn't work. No, they are talking about a particular type of democracy. For me, there is a simple issue. Governance has to be inclusive, it has to be participatory. People have to have a voice. The baby that does not cry dies in the mother's, the crib we used to carry babies on the back. So it's not enough to elect people. They fool around for 5 years, they steal, there are no consequences in the system. We wait for the body language of the empire before we move. So something happens in Rwanda, we first Pan-Africanism, hoye, but we look first, what is France doing? What is the US doing? When we see there's neutrality, then we come to embrace. So body language of the empire. Our leadership, I am sorry to have to say this, has had this duplicitous approach to solidarity, where if you listen to speeches, you'll think tomorrow will be liberation. When you look at action, there's such a paucity of action, you realize they are waiting for permission from France or from Britain or from the EU to act. We've been constructed with this persistent and constant fear of loss, that none of our leaders wish to anger the empire. So we wait to make sure that actions we believe are necessary are only taken when we are absolutely convinced the empire will not frown on it. We have an instinct of colonized people. The instinct of colonized people is this: first, make sure the master is not angry. Number two, you act to discipline the rest of the other natives. Number three, try and get the stars as the good boy or the good girl from the empire. Once they say this is a sign of a good leader or a good country. This idea of looking for a stamp of approval essentially means African solidarity will forever only be transacted via the prism of European and American, European and American certification. Certified from Europe or from Washington. Now you can be in solidarity with each other. We talk a lot. We talk a lot. There is a proverb in Uganda that says, if you make an agreement with a lion to become vegetarian, be rest assured you are the first vegetable the lion will eat. There is a Moroccan proverb that says, let's be like a tree that never changes its roots, but may change its leaves in different seasons. It's important to understand that we have repeated lies about ourselves and lies about development. One of the lies we repeat, by 2050, 75% of Africans are going to be living in urban areas. I want to challenge those of you who claim to be intellectuals. The only reasons why Africans are coming to urban areas is because we have not developed the rural areas. But all foreign capital that's coming to your countries is not investing in your urban areas. It's going to the same rural areas that you have socialized your people to believe they have to leave their land where there are critical minerals, they have to leave that land where there's underground water and come and be what? Homeless in the urban areas, or to be vendors or to be unemployed. What are they leaving their land to for those who wish to invest in the critical minerals? I think we now need to go beyond making agriculture sexy and some of the continent's food security, climate security. The continent's security depends on young people realizing that as this generation on this stage and other older than us die out, they will remain with the land whether agriculture is sexy or not. They will remain with the rivers whether they think it's a place to go or not. You young people, this is not about anyone making this sexy for you. For goodness sake, if you don't take the responsibility now, you will wake up very soon, you will no longer be youth, you will be adults and you won't know what to do. So stop sleepwalking, wake up, this is your continent. No one is going to give it to you, especially not the elderly leadership. You have to grab the future by the scruff of its neck, not through only protest and demonstrations, but through applying yourself with the skills that you have, using new technologies to produce value that makes sure you are not as poor as your grandfathers or as poor as we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I'm a king,